This is part 3 of the review for the Unit 3B test. Let's look at this first one, number 8. It says to determine the rate of change from the following table. So we have this table here. You will see here that the X values is the number of hours worked, and the output, or the Y values, is the total earnings. So what we can determine is the rate of change, which is going to be the earnings based on the hours worked. Now it's just like finding slope. We really need to find the change in Y over the change in X. Over the change in X. We do have a formula for that. The slope, or the rate of change, is equal to Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. I have taught you in class that you can use the strategy of stack, slide, subtract to try to help you. All right, if you want to do it that way, if you're comfortable with that way, but it looks like we have, when there's 0 hours worked, we have $20. Now it's in dollars, so we can go ahead and write that out if we want. Then we also have a 5 with an output of $63.75. Okay, so what we can do is subtract these numbers to find the rate of change, or the slope. Now be sure that you keep your Y's together, because we're going to subtract, find the change of the Y's at the top and the change of the X's at the bottom, and then we can simplify. You may want to consider using your calculator for this as well, but we have the $20 minus the $63.75, and then down at with the X's we have 0 minus 5. So this is simply, we need to work it out. It might be best, like I said, to plug that into the calculator, but when you do so, you get negative 43.75 over negative 5, and of course when you divide those two numbers, a negative divided by negative is positive, and you get 8.75. So what we have going on here, the rate of change, is going to be the $8.75 per hour worked. So again, we would call that $8.75 per hour. And that's how we describe it, as a rate of change. All right, let's take a look at this one. This is also a question about rate of change. We're going to determine the rate of change looking at the following, and this shouldn't say table, this should say graph. So we're not given a table, all right, but we have a graph. What we can do is simply use a couple of the points that are presented in the graph, and again, find the change in Y over the change in X to determine the slope, which is really the rate of change. All right, so you'll notice when X is 1, we have an output of 150, and when X is 0, we have a Y, or an output of 50. So let's just write those two numbers down. Again, we have a 0.50, and we have a 150. All right, so what we're going to do is, again, we're going to find the change in the Y compared to the change in the X. If you want to continue with the stack, slide, subtract, you can write those down. We have 0.50, and we have 1 and 150. We're going to slide those in place and subtract them, so we have 50 minus 150, and we have 0 minus 1. And when we work this out, we get negative 100 over negative 1, and of course that equals 100. So our rate of change, it looks like every time we make a deposit, we deposit an additional $100. Now you see at 0 it started at 50, so that's why with our first deposit we're not at 100, we're at 150. But the rate of change is $100 per deposit. So we can go ahead and write that down. So $100 per deposit. All right, and that's a look at rate of change.